Welcome to the workshop.
Hi, today I'm going to explain the table leg to rail joint. One of the first things to consider with a table to rail joint is what finish we want between the two pieces. A contemporary finish would be as I've set up here, where the two pieces are flush with each other. That can be quite difficult to achieve straight off the chisel and saw. We need to be extremely accurate to get that, and I think it's virtually impossible, but we can always then flush that up with a hand plane after the pieces are glued together. In this instance though, that joint's not going to be very good, not very strong, because no matter where we create the tenon across the width of the rail, our mortise is going to have to be very close to this outside face of the leg, and that's going to make the joint unsound. If we were to replace the rail with something a little bit thicker, then we could produce the tenon very close to the inside face of the rail, and there'd be plenty of meat left to the outside of the leg. So using the components we've got, our best option is to set the rail in perhaps 1/8 of an inch from this front face of the leg. We're then far enough in to be able to put a tenon centrally on the rail, and that will put a mortise about 3/16 in from the edge of the leg, which is plenty, and that will be nice and sound. So the top of the leg ends up looking like this. We've got a setback of 1/8 of an inch for both rails. What I'm going to show you in this video is how we tackle square and nearly square leg sections, and that will be the tenons will both come through to full depth on the mortise which joins in the corner, and how we tackle the ends of the rails so that they don't interfere with each other I'll show you a little later on. So the first step is to chop the mortises so that they meet towards this outside corner of the leg. I'm going to include little haunches to stop the rails from twisting on both of those, and I'm going to hold back the full mortise for about 3/16 of an inch down the leg and carry that through to within 1/8 of an inch of the full depth of the rail. Then I'll cut the tenons with haunches and fit them so that individually they fit and give a nice tight shoulder line. I think you'll realise by now that we won't be able to put both of them in at the same time, because they'll be vying for the same area of space down in this outside corner, and I'll show you how we tackle that later. And I would advise you to look at my videos on the Stub Mortise Tenon joint and the Haunched Mortise Tenon joint, so you'll better see how I've done that, and I'll come back when that's done and explain the next part of the process. I've selected a 3/16 of an inch mortise chisel, roughly 5mm, and now I've set my mortise gauge pins so that they're the same width apart as the width of my chisel. Now I set the fence of the mortise gauge so that I will be marking for a tenon in the middle of my rails. I've just marked for the mortises. I've reset my mortising gauge a fence another 1/8 of an inch away to give us an 1/8 of an inch reveal. I've measured off the length of the rail, or the width of the rail, and I've just come inside that and marked my mortise lines, and then I've marked off an 1/8 of an inch up from the base, which is where we'll chop from, and then another line just inside that for our initial chopping, and at the top I'm leaving 1/4 inch, which will be haunch, and then another line inside that for our initial chopping. Now I'll chop both of those mortises so that they connect with each other in a nice clean corner just inside the outside edge. Before I finish chopping this pair of mortises, I'll just show you a tip when I've got intersecting mortises, and that's to prepare a little offcut that's just the right size for the mortise to slip in there, and we slip it in the opposing mortise that we're chopping towards, in that case coming in from this side. So I'll slip that in there, and then when I'm chopping down and I get to the depth of the mortise underneath, I won't get any breakout. So effectively this is sitting right up against the edge of where I'm chopping, so when I break through, this will prevent any breakout. So I've finished preparing the mortises and the tenons, and this one fits in and this one fits in nice and snug. But if we try and put them both in together, we have a slight problem. This one won't go all the way in. The tenon on this rail comes all the way down here in line with the bottom of this mortise, and it fills that whole gap. So there's no way we can push this tenon all the way in. Now, because this is a rectangular section here, what we could do is foreshorten this tenon so it doesn't enter the end of this mortise, and then this could push all the way in, and we'd have relatively good glue surface on both pieces. But if this was a square, and it's quite close to square, the best thing to do is to have both of the outside faces of these tenons reach towards the corner, and the way to do that is to mitre the end of them at 45 degrees. So we want to mitre this one like so, and this one like so, and we'll do that on the shooting board. I've attached my sloped mitering jig onto the shooting board. Now, because the fence is not going to contact the back of the tenon because of the cutaway, I'm just going to start that mitre with a saw to avoid any tear out. Place it on the ramp, and pretty soon we've got a nice 45-degree mitre on there. Same on the other piece, and that's that one done. And there we have a perfect leg to rail table joint or chair joint. Tight joint lines all the way round, and we've got that maximum glue surface by mitering the tenons for a good fit inside the mortises. A leg to rail joint, give it a go.